On this edition of Southern News Week, the new cycle lanes along State Highway 1 in Dunedin are opened. Education Minister Chris Hipkins' proposed shake-up received a frosty southern reception. And there was high-octane action at the Bob Scott Memorial Hill Climb in Kaitangata. Kia ora, good evening, I'm Melissa Barton. The new cycle lanes along State Highway 1 in Dunedin are officially open. Construction of the New Zealand Transport Agency's $8 million project began 2 years ago and runs through central and north Dunedin.
Cutting the ribbon before leading a group ride. Dunedin North MP Dr David Clark officially opening the city's new cycleway, along with officials and workers involved with the project. Dr Clark says separated cycle lanes will be an all-round win for more than just cyclists.
As Health Minister, I'm really thrilled that we're opening this cycleway. We know that the benefits of cycling outweigh the risks by 20 to 1, but that a lot of people still don't do it because they are worried about their own well-being and safety. The separated cycle lanes makes things safer for cyclists, but it also makes things safer and a bit more comfortable for motorists.
In recent years, a number of cyclists have died in road accidents along the one-way system through the city. Dunedin's Deputy Mayor Chris Staines says the deaths are tragic, but helped spur the group towards the cycle lanes project.
Yeah, it'll make a significant difference. There's enough room now that if someone opens a door, you're unlikely to get knocked off your bike, and you have that separation from traffic, and it helps particularly with big trucks where the truck driver didn't always know that you as a cyclist were there.
Former Dunedin City Council Chief Executive Jim Harland is one of the New Zealand Transport Agency team who oversaw the project. He says having a separated cycleway will inspire more people to use the lanes.
We know that if you have a separated cycleway from the main traffic flow, and in this case 25,000 vehicles a day, then 70% of the population who are interested might, quite a high proportion of them might try it, which is really good.
He says key features of the cycle lane design include traffic islands to keep people on bikes and highway traffic apart and safe. Further cycle lane projects are set to continue along State Highway 88 to Port Chalmers, as well as along the Otago Peninsula Road. In Dunedin, the South Today.
Education Minister Chris Hipkins' proposed shake-up of the Polytechnic sector appears to be frightening southern institutions. The minister was heckled as he addressed a meeting at Invercargill's Southern Institute of Technology a week ago.
Those of you who want to take a seat, if you do...
A chilly reception for Education Minister Chris Hipkins in Invercargill on Friday regarding the plans to create a central body to manage the capital and operational budgets for all polytechnics across New Zealand. 4 days on, tonight we'll see Hipkins speaking at the Otago Polytechnic, whose chief executive recognises the need for change.
The general direction of the reforms we think is a positive move for New Zealand, for tertiary education in New Zealand.
Kerr's concern is shifting the majority of administration to Wellington will reduce Otago Polytechnic's flexibility and innovation.
It's a very heavily centralised model with what we think is too much and some of the wrong sort of decision making at the centre.
Education Minister Chris Hipkins says while he's pushing for a centralised administration, he's envisaging the regional polytechs will still stay open.
We want a national organisation to be able to pick up those national functions, but then some stuff's still going to have to stay local. At the end of the day, the teaching and the learning's still got to have to happen somewhere, and you're still going to have process for people to get into that, to get qualified. So the consultation exercise really is about, how do we actually make sure that at the local level, people are still empowered, they can still innovate, and they can still do what they're good at.
Kerr's hopeful the Education Ministry will take on board the objections of the campaigners in the South.
The only way you get a good idea is to put it out there and then listen to what people are saying, and in a way that's the point, isn't it? We're in a consultation period, so we've got to make sure we put forward the very best of our thinking in order to persuade the Minister to adopt it rather than what's been put on the table.
Tonight's meeting at the Otago Polytechnic hub is set to run from 5 to 7 p.m, with the public consultation period closing at the end of the month. In Dunedin, for the South Today.
The Alps to Ocean ultra-distance race is due to wrap up in Oamaru over the weekend. Competitors who finish the race will have run, walked and stumbled more than 300 kilometres from the centre of the South Island to Oamaru. It's the first ultra-distance race for one local who's vowing to finish the course.
Racing for glory while supporting the other competitors. Race director Mike Sandry says although it's a race, there's a strong sense of unity between competitors as they're all going through the same ordeal.
And even before, they wait for each other when someone crosses the finish line so that, hey, thanks, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have got through here, so thanks for sacrificing some of your speed to help me get through. That was a slower runner, and that's the thing that I love about it.
Oamaru man Ben Fraser is one of the locals taking part and was the last to finish an 88-kilometre stage this week, the feat taking him almost 28 hours.
How was that?
He's physically and emotionally drained.
Oh, it was a long day. I was lucky to be out there for overnight with my tent mate. She was having some difficult times as well, so yeah, we sort of got each other through, and yeah, we managed to pull through and finish her off this morning.
By day, he's a roading contractor based in Waimate, and this is his first multi-sport race. He says although it's tough going, he's determined to finish in Oamaru.
I hope so. It's always my plan. I'll tell you what, it'll take a lot to trip me up, I think.
The first of the Alps to Ocean competitors are set to cross the finish line in Oamaru tomorrow. In Otago, the South Today.
To be the fastest to the top of the hill was the goal at the Bob Scott Memorial Gravel Hill Climb last weekend. Held at Kaitangata, the event saw 19 cars from across the ages race against the clock up a rough gravel track.
Giving it their all. Cars scream up White's Road behind Kaitangata for the Bob Scott Memorial Gravel Hill Climb. The South Otago Car Club event caters for homemade V8s, modified rally cars as well as classic cars, and is held in memory of former racing driver and mayor of Kaitangata, Bob Scott Sr. His two sons now sponsor the event.
It's a great bit of heritage with the Scott family. Their fathers raced here. They've supported it for all of these years. Without their support, we probably couldn't run the event. They put up some prize money as well, which is really, really good for us.
He says the race has become historically significant.
It's quite an iconic old hill climb. They used to do this in their old Chevys with no roll cages, no seatbelts, whatever back in the day, And, any of the motor racing history from the original club that was in Balclue, the Kai Hill Climb was it.
More than 50 years ago, Bob Scott used to regularly win the hill climb in his hand-built specials, which still race up the hill today. Scott's sons have plenty of fond memories of the early years.
First event I ever had up here was in a Consul 315, but on slick tyres, but I was just out of school then. But I've raced Lola 5000s, Reynard, Formula Holdens, Formula Fords, a lot of things.
Drivers enjoy the hill climb, though they say it's quite an effort for the vehicles, with the road being steeper than it seems.
It's quite a challenge. There's some good technical corners in it. It's very steep. It doesn't look as steep as what it is, but it really sucks the power out of the cars. And it's good fun.
The fastest car of the day was a modern Toyota, which took 1 minute and 13 seconds to complete the course. Bob Scott's two old home-built racers were only 25 seconds behind, despite being made with technology from 50 years ago. In Kaitangata, for the South Today.
Still to come on this edition of Southern Newsweek. A car fire slowed traffic to a crawl after a car burst into flames at the side of Dunedin's northern motorway. And the Waitaki Community Hospital Action Group is vowing to keep the pressure on proposed staff cuts at Oamaru Hospital. Welcome back. Traffic slowed to a crawl after a car burst into flames at the side of Dunedin's northern motorway last weekend. The female motorist, who declined to be named, says she heard a loud bang and pulled over. Her car's engine became a ball of flame as crews from Fire and Emergency New Zealand arrived. A man who helped the driver from a burning car says he was just doing what he thought was the right thing to do. Police say the fire disrupted the flow of traffic leaving the city after Saturday night's Eagles concert. And the motorway was closed for a short time while firefighters extinguished the blaze. The Waitaki Community Hospital Action Group is vowing to keep the pressure on proposed staff cuts at Oamaru Hospital. That's the message from the protest group who staged a peaceful picket in Oamaru recently.
Making their feelings known. Around 100 protesters in Oamaru denouncing the proposal for change to staffing at their local hospital. Last month, the Otago Daily Times obtained a copy of a confidential document including proposed staff cuts and a reconfiguration of the hospital's layout to increase efficiency. The proposal says the number of full-time equivalent nursing roles will be reduced, meaning additional responsibilities for senior nurses on duty. Administration, occupational therapy, orderly and cleaning roles will also be affected.
We are really concerned about the idea of disestablishing staff in a rural community as a major risk to have a major loss of our staffing.
Dr. Clayton says the announcement has affected the morale of hospital staff.
They are feeling really demoralised by this whole process. These are people who've been in the services for a very long time, some of them, and some of them are new people who are just on the ground. And we wanted to show our support for those people and to say we care about you, you're an important part of our community.
She says they've been encouraged by public support for their protest.
It's been really good to hear the traffic, the turnout of people hooting. It's great to see the people, a portion of our society really interested in this, really wanting to support the staff and backing this.
The Waitaki Community Hospital Action Group says they'll remain active in their opposition of the proposal, and this will include engaging in dialogue with the Southland District Health Board and the Ministry of Health. In Oamaru, for the South Today.
A year ago, Andy Cunningham received a phone call which brought tears of relief. His beloved dog Meg had been missing for 5 weeks and Cunningham had given up on the search. Now 12 months down the track, the pair remain inseparable.
Meg's a dog in good voice. A year ago, it was a very different story when the much-loved mongrel of Andy and Alison Cunningham was found barely alive 5 weeks after running away from a car crash. The Dunedin couple were resigned to never seeing her again.
We'd completely given up. We had decided that lunchtime that we were going to give up, and I just hadn't got round to putting the post on Facebook. And then the phone went. And because of the person who was on the other end, we took that the claim of the sighting very seriously, and they took us down to where they said that they had seen Meg, and we walked into this particular paddock, and as soon as we began to walk up the slope towards where they said she was, this little black head came out of the grass, and I called her name, and she stood up and wagged her tail, and I burst into tears.
Andy Cunningham was instrumental in starting up the Dunedin Wildlife Hospital, and he's forever in the hospital's debt after the team there pulled out all the stops.
And it was actually quite hard to suppress the emotions enough to get her into the hospital, the wildlife hospital, because I'd phoned Lisa from the valley saying that she had a very special patient coming in, and she realised immediately who it was. And we took her in. She'd lost half her body weight, she had injuries, we weren't sure whether she was just going to have to be put to sleep. But as soon as they did the blood tests, they said, she's fine. We just need to try to sort her out and check for the infections.
Some years earlier, Cunningham was seriously injured to the point where it was uncertain whether he'd walk again. He credits Meg with helping his rehabilitation.
Meg couldn't understand why Daddy couldn't go running in the hills anymore. So as soon as I was on crutches a few weeks later, it was like, come on, Dad, we're going for a walk. and she insisted on having her 2 or 3 walks a day, and so rain or shine, on crutches, I was being forced to do my physiotherapy. And so without realising it, she was probably the best physiotherapist I had during the whole of my recovery. And, you know, I credit quite a lot of the speed with which I began to walk again to Meg.
These days, Meg still bears the scars of her 5-week ordeal, and her front legs will never be the same. But Cunningham is pleased Meg's wagging tail and story can be an inspiration to others.
Actually, it's a real gift because not only do I look on every day as an absolute thing to cherish because of having her with me, but when people come up and say, is that Meg, the dog that was missing, you know, it gives people such a good feel. It makes them have a sense of community, have a sense of something that unifies people in a happy way. It's one of the things that Meg has managed to achieve in her short life. She has given a lot of people a lot of happiness.
One of Andy and Meg's favourite pastimes is meeting friends old and new at places like the Forester Park Dog Exercise Area. In Dunedin, the South Today.
Still to come on this edition of Southern Newsweek, we see possibly not the country's smartest would-be burglar who's caught on camera, and some of Dunedin's recently completed cycle lanes in the central city may need to be moved while the new hospital is built. Thanks for staying with us. A person of interest linked to a spate of Queenstown thefts appears to have tried breaking into a security company vehicle and ended up being filmed. The attempted break-in involved a vehicle belonging to a security professional whose video cameras recorded the incident. 2 more burglaries were reported to police over last weekend. Tools were taken from a table in front of a house as well as from a building site. Last week, 2 tool thefts took place at Lake Hayes Estate, as well as an attempted break-in. Police released the footage saying they believe the man can help with their inquiries. Some of Dunedin's recently completed cycle lanes in the central business district are likely to be moved while the new hospital is being built. That's according to Health Minister David Clark, who admits there will be some disruption.
New Zealand Transport Agency figures state around 25,000 vehicles travel State Highway 1 through Dunedin daily, which is one of the reasons the NZTA and City Council worked together creating separated cycle lanes through the CBD. But now Health Minister David Clark admits the pricey new cycle lanes will be disrupted.
Yeah, the new hospital will obviously cause disruption in town. There's never been a construction project that hasn't. It's great that these dividers are movable so that when we do have change going on in the central city, we'll be able to make sure that motorists and cyclists continue to be safe through good road engineering.
Despite this interference to traffic flow on the horizon, he says the government fully supports alternatives to car use.
The government is committed to walking and cycling. 390 million over the next 3 years will be spent, and that's nearly 100 million more than the previous 3 years. We recognise the benefits of connected cities, of getting people out to do exercise, and also the comfort that it brings to motorists and cyclists alike.
Following the recent release of the hospital rebuild site master plan, the public will be able to have their say on the multi-million-dollar redevelopment. A public forum on the rebuild is scheduled at the Dunedin Public Art Gallery in 2 weeks' time. In Dunedin, the South Today.
Hundreds of horses, riders, wagons, walkers and cyclists rolled into Lake Hawea last Saturday for the conclusion of this year's Otago Goldfields Cavalcade. The warm, still conditions couldn't have been more perfect for the final day of the annual event.
Finally at their destination, more than 400 horses, plus riders, walkers and cyclists converging at Lake Hawea at the end of the annual cavalcade. About half of this year's 11 trails, which ranged from walking and cycling to heavy wagons, had to undergo route changes because of fire risks. Geraldine McDougall and her group of 58 walkers encountered sleet on the Criffle Range and stayed overnight in various wool sheds. She says organising the walks is becoming increasingly complicated.
It took a lot to get this trail organised. The logistics of between wool sheds and that is getting harder and harder each year, but it's all panned out. You know, it's like a jigsaw puzzle when that last piece goes in. Yay!
Blair Lennon says his team of Clydesdales pulled heavy wagons over the Lindis Pass, where they encountered mostly great weather.
We had one morning that we all yoked up and everything and it was fine, and about 3 hours we had a bit of rain and skitchy stuff, and then dinner time come clear, so yeah, no, it was brilliant. Yeah, it really was.
While many cavalcade trails are a distinct journey from A to B, there is an alternative called a cloverleaf trail, where riders have a base camp and simply go out on day trips.
Yeah, I've done the cloverleafs probably for about the last 10 years, and then before that we just used to be the point-to-point ones, but then we've got a bit older and that, and you get a bit more of a holiday on the cloverleaf ones, and you can bring a few luxuries like your toilet and things, and which makes all the difference.
Next year's cavalcade is set to take riders to the Maniototo town of Patearoa near Ranfurly. In Hawea, for the South Today.
A 9-month-old German Shepherd puppy has been specially bred for the purpose of being able to sniff out disease. Researchers believe the enthusiastic canine will eventually make a real difference in early cancer detection.
Levi, the energetic and curious 9-month-old German Shepherd puppy, has the potential to be a game changer in disease detection.
Well, it has been shown internationally that dogs can be trained to detect prostate cancers in urine, so I think it's really exciting to do that in New Zealand as well.
He's been specifically bred as a medical detection dog in the hope he'll eventually put his keen nose to work sniffing out diseases such as cancer and Parkinson's disease. But Professor Young says Levi has a lot of training to complete before he can help researchers.
So we have to do a whole lot of proof of concept tests. So the initial training of the dog on the scent, then the training of the dog on different concentrations of the scent, and then adding in urine and clinical samples.
The specific medical training is set to begin shortly, but for now he's in the hands of Pauline Blomfeld, whose first task is to harness Levi's energy and get him focused enough to begin training and eventually to save lives.
So for me, if I can use our dogs as a diagnostic tool to make a little bit of a dent on those statistics, then how exciting is that?
When his proper training begins, Levi will start familiarising himself with patches scented with the smell of cancer, and he'll be rewarded when he detects them. In Dunedin, the South Today.
And that's all for this edition of Southern News Week. For the latest news from the Southern region, head online to odt.co.nz and follow Channel 39 on Facebook and YouTube. Thanks for joining us. Have a great evening. Ka kite anō.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.